My name is Nonat, and welcome to the ultimate guide to the Dwarf Ancestry for Pathfinder Second Edition. This video is going to be divided up into 5 chapters covering every single detail of the dwarf. The 5 chapters are: what is a dwarf? The ancestral bonuses gained from picking the dwarf, the heritages available to dwarves, the ancestry feats available to dwarves by level, and 3 recommended classes for dwarf characters. If you want to jump to any of these chapters, you can go right along the scroll bar at the bottom of the video, as this video has been divided up to show you exactly where each chapter starts. I want to give a massive shout out to everybody on screen right now supporting me on the Nonat1's Patreon page. If you want to help support the channel as well and get your name on this list, you can do so for $10 a month. It helps me keep going, keep the channel alive, and keep doing what I'm doing. So, what is a dwarf? A dwarf is one of the most common ancestries on Golarion, the world of Pathfinder's lore. They are mostly found underground and ideally on the side of a mountain in one of their massive sky citadels. These are dwarven cities that are built and expanded out of the side of a mountain, effectively turning the entire mountain into the dwarves' home city itself. Dwarves are a lot of things. They tend to be stubborn, stoic, and full of zeal, and very passionate about what is important to them. As the rulebook states, a dwarf's trust is hard to earn, but once you have it, it is strong as steel. And an integral part of dwarven culture is their craftsmanship. At the end of the day, many dwarves love to craft. Much like the sponsor of today's video, Frontier Wargaming and their well-crafted Game Master's Chest. Let's face it, organization is not a strong suit for most of us, and an in-person TTRPG session has a lot of components. You've got dice, books, maps, pencils, miniatures. There's so much to keep track of, and if you're like me, you just kind of dump it all into a reusable grocery bag and hope for the best. But Frontier Wargaming is changing the game with their Game Master's Chest. This is a high-quality wooden container specifically designed to hold everything you need for your TTRPG game and function as a physical GM screen. The central slot can hold multiple rulebooks, and the sides have multiple removable drawers, perfect for holding dice, pencils, and other small accoutrements. That's French for little extra things, probably. There's even taller shelves that can hold your minis, and these shelves are magnetic, meaning your minis aren't gonna bounce around during transit. In fact, the whole box is magnetic, meaning you can attach anything to it, like notes to the inside for during the session, or pictures on the outside for your players to see. It comes with a fully functional dice tower and dice box that link together, and even a tablet holder with a built-in wireless charger. This thing is handcrafted and incredibly high quality, y'all. These chests are made to order, allowing you to pick both your favorite color and have it custom engraved like my little Nonat ones on the front here. The Fast Track tier has already sold out, but there's plenty of chests available in the Wave 1 tier, which will be shipped out between August and December later this year. This would make for the perfect gift for that GM in your life. Get you and your players to all come together, get them a little something. A big something. Click my link in the description and pledge to support the Game Master's Chest Kickstarter today. Handmade crafts like this are getting harder and harder to come by, so being able to support something truly handmade, engraved, and personalized is amazing. Thank you, Frontier Wargaming, for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get to dwarves. By picking a dwarf, you get all of the ancestral benefits listed on page 43 of Player Core 1, including 10 bonus hit points you get to add to your character, medium size, a 20-foot movement speed, which is lower than most other ancestries. Dwarves are inherently slower, but they do have something to make up for that later. If you're not using the alternate ancestral boost system, then dwarves gain an attribute bonus to their constitution, wisdom, and a free score of your choice, with an ancestry flaw in charisma. All dwarves speak Common and Dwarven, as well as any extra languages equal to your intelligence modifier. They also get the dwarf and humanoid traits. All dwarves have dark vision and are given a clan dagger at birth. This is a dagger that is specifically made for your character before they were born, and losing or selling this dagger in any way is taboo to your entire culture. Jumping into the Dwarven Heritages. During character creation, you can pick any of the following heritages to give your dwarf, and you gain the listed benefit for your character's entire life. Ancient blooded dwarves are naturally resilient to magics and gain the Call on Ancient Blood reaction. Whenever you're about to make a saving throw against any magical effect at all, not just a spell, but any inherently magical effect, you can gain a +1 circumstance bonus to all saving throws against all magical effects until the end of that current turn. This is phenomenal. There are some higher level class feats that can give a temporary bonus to saving throws against specific effects, and the fact that your dwarf can just do this as many times as they want per day, there's no limit on this, you can effectively look at this as a +1 to all saving throws against magical effects, as long as they don't happen more than once in a single round. Death Warden dwarves are naturally averse and resilient against the forces of the undead. If you make a saving throw against an effect that originated from an undead source, or the effect has the Void trait, and you get a normal success, you can automatically upgrade that to a critical success instead. That's amazing right at level 1. Holy cow. Forged dwarves were forged in fire and thus are incredibly resilient to heat and fire damage. You gain resistance to fire damage equal to half your level, and you treat all environmental heat effects as though they were one step less severe. So if you were, say, in a sweltering desert, it's just not as bad for you. Rock dwarves. You love rocks, your parents love rocks, and you love standing on rocks. So much so that you get a +2 circumstance bonus to your fortitude DC to resist being tripped, shoved, or repositioned. This +2 bonus also applies to all saving throws against effects that would knock you prone or move you around. This is fantastic. Plus, if you do happen to fail against one of these effects and you would be shoved 10 feet or more, you move half as far. So if something would shove you 20 feet back, you're only moving 10. If it would push you 100 for some godforsaken reason, you're only moving 50. This is a great heritage. And finally, the strong-blooded dwarf. Your body is stoic and so are your arteries. You are inherently resilient against poisons, both normal and virulent. You gain resistance to poison damage equal to half your level, minimum 1, and anytime you would reduce the stage of a poison currently affecting you, you reduce it 2 stages on a success and 3 stages on a critical success. If the poison happens to be virulent, which can normally only be reduced on a critical success, you can reduce it by 1 stage on a normal success and 2 on a critical. Phenomenal. Believe it or not, we're already on Chapter 4, the Ancestry Feats. These function similar to class feats in that once you pick it out, it's either an action you can now take whenever you want, or a permanent buff that will always be applied to you, or in certain situations. Let's start with Dwarven Dotiness. This is just a permanent buff. At the end of your turn, rather than reducing Frightened by 1 like a normal character, you reduce Frightened by 2. Fantastic. Most fear and frightening effects only apply to frighten at the worst until you're at farther level in the game. So if you critically fail a saving throw and you get applied frighten 2, that's all gone by the end of 1 turn. Fantastic. Dwarven Lore. All Ancestries have a lore feat, which gives you 2 skill proficiencies and then a proficiency in that culture's lore. Dwarven Lore grants you trained proficiency in crafting and religion, as well as additional lore for dwarf lore. The nice thing about this feat is it specifically grants you the dwarf lore using the additional lore general feat seen on screen here, meaning you do not need to invest any skill proficiency upgrades into this lore. It will automatically scale with your character level. Fantastic. Dwarven Weapon Familiarity. You gain access to all weapons with the dwarf trait. The dwarf trait. You gain all access to weapons with the dwarf trait, even if they are uncommon, meaning you no longer need GM permission to have them. On top of that, any weapon with the dwarf trait is now treated as one weapon class simpler than it would be. Advanced weapons are now considered martial, and martial weapons are now considered simple. So your dwarf wizard can hold a battle axe and be fine. Additionally, once you're character level 5, if you land a critical hit with any of these dwarf weapons, you can apply the critical specialization as well. This is great for classes like wizards or others that don't normally get the critical specializations for weaponry until much higher level. Mountain Strategy. You're really good at holding a grudge on the battlefield. You automatically get a +1 circumstance bonus to all damage against orcs, goblins, giants, and Hringar. But on top of that, anytime a creature hurts you and deals damage to you in combat, you gain your bonus damage against that creature for 1 minute, regardless of what type of creature it is. This bonus damage also scales with your number of weapon damage dice, so it might not sound like a lot, but as long as you've taken a hit from a creature, you're dealing a permanent +1, +2, +3 damage with all of your attacks against them. You put this feat on something like a Flurry Ranger, and you've got a lot of bonus damage stacking up. I also like that it adds this special text that if your character's backstory maybe involves having your entire clan murdered by invasive elves or humans or those evil gnomes, then you can get this permanent +1 circumstance bonus against that trait of enemy as well because it fits with your character's backstory. Love that. Rock Runner. You are so used to uneven earth in the mountains and underground that you're no longer affected by it. Normal difficult terrain caused by rubble or otherwise natural rocky formations is considered normal terrain for you. Keep in mind, this does not turn greater difficult terrain into normal difficult terrain. Greater difficult terrain will still have its full penalty to your movement. In addition, you're great at balancing on rocky surfaces. If you roll a normal success while trying to balance on a rocky surface, not only do you get an automatic crit success, but you're also not off guard like a normal character would be. Not bad overall, especially if you know the campaign's going to take place in some rocky environments. And I feel like most campaigns go underground at least once. Stonemason's Eye. You become trained in crafting, or if you were already trained in crafting, you gain the specialty crafting skill feat with the stone masonry specialization. On top of that, you also get a +2 to all perception checks to notice weird things in stonework, including but not limited to hidden doors, people or creatures hiding among the stone through like camouflage, or even traps laid into the stones themselves. You also don't have to seek to discover traps like this, and if anything would ever be hiding within stonework or stone walls, the GM will automatically roll a secret check for your character to notice them. However, if this is the case and you're not actively searching, you don't get the +2. Unburdened Iron. You are stout, you are short, but you're good at wielding really heavy armor. As long as you have this feat, you ignore any speed penalty originating from armor you're currently wearing. Even if you're wearing a -10-foot speed penalty full plate armor, that does not affect you. In addition, if any effect would ever reduce your movement speed, like a spell like Tanglevine, or even being encumbered, you reduce the penalty to your movement speed by 5 feet, and there's no minimum to this. So if there's any effect that would give you -5-foot speed penalty, you take -0 instead. Level 5 Ancestry Feats, starting with Boulder Roll. Rock Runner is a prerequisite as this goes along with the whole Rock Dwarf flavor. For 2 actions, you just step into someone's personal bubble, and they have 2 options. They can either say, "Okay, Chief," and take a step backwards into a space behind them, or they can attempt to resist your step by rolling Fortitude against your Athletics DC. Hilariously, if they succeed their Fortitude DC, you don't get to step into their space, but they still take damage equal to your Strength modifier. On a success, failure, or critical failure, they take that damage. It's only on a critical success that your action completely fails. Well, that's not entirely true. Your action also completely fails if the target has nowhere to go, though I think it would be really funny if you could deal bonus damage by squishing them against the wall before stepping backwards. A very important piece of text in this feat is this one right here. The foe must move even if doing so places it in harm's way. Most forced movement effects in Pathfinder 2e do not have that specification and specifically cannot be used to put them in harm's way. So if you have any way to put down snares or traps or some kind of hazardous effect on the ground, this dwarf can actually push people into it. They can only move them 5 feet, but that's still not bad. Defy the Darkness. You upgrade your Dwarven Dark Vision into Greater Dark Vision, meaning you can even see through magical darkness like the 4th level Darkness spell. However, there is a caveat to this feat. If you take Defy the Darkness, you are not allowed to do or use anything with the Darkness trait. You can't cast any spells, you can't wield any magic items, you can't do anything Darkness related. Something Kingdom Hearts joke. Dwarven Reinforcement. You do need to be an expert in crafting to take this feat, but it is incredibly useful. You can spend 1 hour working on any item to give it +1 to its hardness, or +2 if you're master, +3 if you're legendary in crafting. This might not sound amazing, but remember how shields work in Pathfinder 2e. Shields reduce the incoming damage by their hardness. So if you can give it +2 hardness onto your allies or your own shield, that's reducing incoming damage when they shield block by 2, reducing the damage that not only the player is taking, but the shield itself for the damage that gets through the block. Increasing shield hardness is fantastic for reducing overall damage, and the fact that it lasts for 24 hours means your ally can use this all throughout the day. If they block 4 hits before their shield breaks, you just stopped 8 incoming damage with an Ancestry feat. Not bad at all. And there's no limit to how many people you can do this to. If you've got 3 party members all with shields, you can do it to all of them as long as you have 3 hours to spend. Echoes in Stone at 9th level. If you are standing on a stone or earthen surface, you can spend 1 action and gain 20-foot tremor sense until the start of your next turn. Remember, you don't have to be in combat to use this. If you're exploring, you can sort of stop, use it, and just focus and listen for anything within a 20-foot emanation around you. If you're in like a tight corridor and you hear something like scratching in the walls, you can pinpoint a little bit better how close and where it is. Much better feat than it might seem at first glance. Mountain Stoutness. This is basically the Toughness General feat, and it stacks with it. You increase your hit point maximum by your level, so you get 9 extra hit points, and reduce the DC for recovery checks while dying by 1. And like I said, this stacks with toughness, so you get both sources of hit points, 9 and 9, and it reduces the DC of recovery checks by 4 total. If you have toughness and mountain stoutness, your dying checks are 6 plus your dying value, meaning you only need to roll a 7 if you are dying 1 to stabilize. So unless you're me and rolling a 5 or below every time you toss that 20-sided rock, this will save your life. Shut up, phone. I'm doing a job. Stone Bones. From now on, whenever you get critically hit by a physical damage source, you can spend your reaction, and if you manage to roll a flat 17 or higher on the d20, you convert that critical hit into a normal hit. It won't always come up, but honestly, you're going to get critically hit probably at least once a session, especially if you're on the front line, so having a 20% chance to change any critical into a normal hit, that's really good in my book. Stonewalker. You can cast 1 with stone as a 3rd level spell once per day, and I'll put it on screen so you can see what it does. This feat also has an upgrade if you took Stone Mason's Eye. The second you take this feat, you can now notice legendary perception required traps even if you don't have legendary perception. And if you manage to reach legendary perception, then you can start applying the +2 circumstance bonus from Stone Mason's Eye to the free secret perception check the GM rolls for you. Very nice upgrade. March the Mines at 13th level. For 2 actions, you gain a 15-foot burrow speed, and you can immediately burrow twice. Not only that, but you can bring someone with you. One nearby ally can follow you and end 1 space behind you. So you can effectively burrow 30 feet in a direction. And as long as you only burrow, say, 25 feet, you can come out of the ground, take a step forward, and your ally comes out as well. This is really, really good, honestly. Burrow is an unsung hero of movement and can get you out of some seriously sticky situations. Telluric Power is okay. As long as you are attacking a target who is standing on the same surface as yourself, you gain a circumstance bonus to damage equal to the number of damage dice you're rolling. The damage bonus is actually the exact same as the Mountain Strategy feat at level 1, the only difference is it doesn't need to be a specific type of enemy. And just to be clear, Telluric Power and Mountain Strategy cannot stack because they are both circumstance bonuses to damage. It's unfortunate. I think being a 13th level feat, it would be fine to let them stack, but maybe just leave it as +1 or +2 damage total. Stonegate at 17th level with Stone Walker as a prerequisite. You can cast the Magic Passage spell as a 7th ranked Divine spell once per day. This allows you to make a 20-foot tunnel. However, unlike the normal spell, it can only be done to earth and rock. So you can create a 20-foot tunnel through earth. I believe it'll also be 10 feet wide as well, so you can fit a lot through there. But unfortunately, you can't do this to, say, metal, or brick. Is brick stone? Brick is like mud, right? And finally, Stonewall, probably the single coolest dwarf feat in the game. Once per day as a reaction, if you have failed your fortitude save or would be taking damage from a hazard or an enemy, you can petrify yourself. You gain the petrified condition until the end of the current turn, and not only do you become immune to the entire source of damage that was about to hit you, you also become immune to any ill effects that it would have put on you. If a fortitude save effect would have put Sickened 5 on you for some reason, you can use Stonewall to negate the entire thing. Fantastic and so cool that just for a brief, like 4-second period, you just completely turn to stone until the effect is gone, the creature's turn ends, and you're back to normal. That's what's amazing about this. It's not like you're petrified until the start of your turn. It's just for that creature's turn. Amazing feat. So let's round this up with my 3 recommended classes that I recommend dwarf characters play, and this is just based off of a slightly min-max direction that the Dwarf Ancestry leans towards. You absolutely do not need to play these classes, and I'm just mainly pointing out the dwarves' strengths and ideas that you can run with. The first class I recommend is obviously Cleric. The Dwarven Cleric is a tried and true RPG classic, and it's important and great here just as it always has been. Not only do they get the attribute boost to Wisdom, but they have a lot of support for saving throws on the back line. A lot of the time, if you're on the back line of combat, you might not be taking direct attacks unless it's specifically a ranged attack, but you might be in the blast zone of a fireball, or you might be affected by a huge aura effect. Dwarves have a ton of ways to gain bonuses to their saving throws, making you way more effective against resisting those effects. The next class, somewhat shockingly, is the Ranger. Obviously, the dwarf iconic Harsk is also a Ranger, and he's a Flurry Ranger for good reason, because dwarves have not only 1, but 2 different feats that give them circumstance bonuses to damage against enemies. Flurry Rangers are all about attacking as many times as possible. I think by level 20, you can attack 6 times per turn, and if you're applying +3 damage to all of those attacks from one of those dwarf feats, that's like 18 potential bonus damage that could also be doubled on crits. So with dwarves' ability to add bonus damage to their attacks against any creature, Flurry Ranger is a great combo. And finally, we gotta give some love to the Kineticist. Dwarves often struggle with picking a class because a Constitution attribute bonus doesn't help with any class's effects except for the Kineticists, who attack rolls and DCs are all based on the character's Constitution modifier. That's all there is to it, really. There's not a whole lot of ancestries that give a boost to Constitution. I think it's only Dwarf and Orc, and obviously you can always apply your free one, but having it flat on the Dwarf itself gives the Kineticist a lot to work with, and an Earth Dwarf Kineticist is just dripping with flavor. You can pick up all the different Dwarf feats that interact with Rock, and then you have the way the Earth Kineticist interacts with Rock. I would know I'm playing an Earth Kineticist. I'm a gnome because I make weird characters, but it was still fun. And there you go. The Dwarf Ancestry for Pathfinder Second Edition. Let me know if this video helped you out and leave a comment telling me about it, or send this video to someone you think might be making a dwarf, someone who needs some advice and information on what they can pick to make a dwarven character. I want to give another great shout out to all of my patrons who support my content, and I want to thank you for liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.